I had that fire. Like I would literally tell myself, before I die, I don't care when, I'm gonna open something, whether it fails or it doesn't. But I don't want to go to the next life thinking I never gave it a shot.
Business is business, take it back to the basics. Multi-million cash, the feeling's amazing. Got a Porsche inside my stable, don't horse with me, baby. 20 plus in my field, I'm like Kobe with the Lakers. It's like I'm touring the Sprinter, doing these road trips, 3 days. Close for more M's, I stay on it. When you step on the premise, just know I own this. Collaborate inside of my district, this for the owners. The conduit and the pun is the true 101. How I conduct business, you just might learn.
What's going on, Collab District family? We got another podcast. We got another entrepreneur, Mr. Chef Luis Sanchez, the owner of Mouthful Eatery. Welcome to the show, sir, and thank you for your time today.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me here, man. I'm excited.
I do these podcasts in hopes to inspire others and also share people's stories because there's so much entrepreneur talent here in Ventura County. So I'll start by asking you, where it began, your childhood, your upbringing. If there's any of, religious or any of your cultural heritage that have played a role, I just kind of want to go back to, where it started for you, where you grew up and, how your household and stuff was that shaped you.
Cool. Yeah, I have definitely an interesting story that started in Lima, Peru, where I'm from.
Okay.
So I lived there for my first 16 years, and then I made the move out here on my own, but we'll get to that. But growing up, I have a restaurant now, and I'm passionate about food and art, and it starts at home, cooking with the fam, and being one of 5 kids and always extended family at the house. I can't remember a time where we sat down for dinner with less than 10 people. Wow. And being middle class, there was always that struggle to extend the meal, So out of half a chicken, you would cook for 10 or 12 people, but it became kind of a fun thing to do, and I was always involved with my mom, who is my food mentor, I guess. Without knowing it, I was just involved in the process of cooking and prepping and tasting, and that's how the love started.
Wow, and you said growing up in a household of 5, where are you in the 5? Are you the
middle
youngest?
child? Middle child, yes, sir. Yeah, right in the middle.
So you probably got bullied a lot from some of your older siblings, and then you also had to take on probably some caretaker duties and responsibilities, having people up under you, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the bullying part especially, and it was very competitive. 4 boys and my little sister. My parents kept looking for that girl, and finally got her on the 5th. Lots of little soccer games, and I just got back from Peru. I was there for New Year's Eve to visit my folks. And it's funny because we have, a little house with a little front yard that is little, maybe, 20 by 20. And we played 2-on-2 soccer matches there. And it's insane that, you can make it work. But I remember just sweating and having a great time there. And now it barely parks 2 cars. And that was our field. It was so cool.
Yeah, and you said you grew up in Peru. Can you talk about, and you also talked about, family dinners mm-hmm. and stretching, middle class having to stretch things, mm-hmm. but it brought you guys together. And I think, I've traveled to different countries or more recently, and I see that there's so much of a cultural difference that we have in America because, like you said, there is a sense of importance around family dinners mm-hmm. and dinner time because it's more than just eating at the table. It's the the connections and the bonds that you continue to build with your family. So did that bring your family together, and are you still close with your brothers and sisters in your family now?
Yeah, definitely. Dinner time is a big family gathering where there's no television. There might be some music on the background, but there's definitely conversation. And my dad, being in the military, he had all these rules about proper eating and sitting up and, lifting your fork the right way. So we had to deal with that as well as there was always a chance. He would always try to get us all involved in like talking, whether it was about your day or something that was going on in Peru or something. But it was always that time where you shared, mm-hmm. whether you wanted to or not. Sometimes, you're fighting with your brother half an hour before that, and here you are talking to him. But it was always that, and the food was always there, it was always an extension of where we were at the time, you know. So they would be. My mom is from Italian descent, so my great grandpa moved to Peru after the war. So we had a lot of like those family style Italian dinners, and those were special times. But yeah, definitely food and family, they met right there on that table.
And did you attend school out in Peru, or were you in school out here in America?
Well, I did high school there, and that's sort of how I ended up in California. Was I finished high school early, and over there the educational system is different. You have to pass a test that's specific per college, and it normally takes you 1, 2, 3 years to pass that test. Wow. And somehow I passed in the first try. I was 16 years old, so I got into college at 16. And as a prize, even though my parents were still not, we weren't rich by any means, they said, well, we want to give you something, because I was also saving them money, and I said just enough money to buy a really beat up car.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, you're too young, and I was already drinking beers with the friends, and they're like, we don't want you driving yet. So we have a cousin that lives in L.A. in Glendale.
Okay.
Why don't you go visit him as a price? And I said, well, sure. I'm not going to have my car, so let's go. So I came here for a 10-day stay, and I never went back.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
Yeah, that was it. I stayed here as a little vacation that ended up being, I told my parents I want to stay here for another 3 months and work, and so I can buy my own car. So yeah, they sent me over here with $410 for 7 days, and I think I went to Universal, Disneyland, and by day 3 I was broke.
All the attractions, right?
That's it. Yeah. So day 3 I had to find a way to make a little money, and I met some guys in the soccer field, and one of the guys did auto detailing, and he asked if I could work the next day with him. So he gave me $25 at the end of 10 hours. And back then for me it was like
$2.50 an hour.
Yeah, but hey, listen, I took it with a smile, man.
Yeah.
And I got Chinese food out of the deal, which is awesome. And then so I did that 3 days in a row, and then he asked me if I could do another week, and then I renegotiated my
There
deal,
you go.
because I started seeing, well, this guy's charging $8 a car, and I'm making the equivalent of 3 car washes when I'm washing 20 cars a day. So, and I spoke a little English, so that put me over the edge. So it's like. So he goes, all right, I'll give you $40 a day. So that was cool. And then little by little, it went from, 3 months to 6 months. And at that point, the 6-month mark, I knew this was home now.
This was home.
Yes, sir.
Wow. So you're coming over here at 16 and moving to LA of all places. Did you have a culture shock? Was there like that, a little bit of like that culture shock, or I don't know what what you knew about America.
I knew what you watch on television, sitcoms especially, and movies. We were blessed when we were younger. We lived in Japan for 7 months because my father got a job in Yokohama and Tokyo. So we moved there, we lived there, we experienced that kind of a culture. So it wasn't as much of a shock. Plus, LA, California is very Hispanic. I landed in the valley, in San Fernando Valley, so it was different, but it wasn't that different. I come from a big city as well, so that part of it wasn't that much of a shock.
And you, like you said, you got a job right when you started working. Did you ever attend college out here?
Yeah. So that was one of my things for my parents, because they said you can stay as long as you keep your education going, because you were going to college out there.
Okay.
So I at 16 legally I couldn't attend college here, because there's either you have a high school diploma here, or you're 18 from another country and have your high school diploma there. So I was neither. So I went back and I enrolled I did Granada Hills High School for 1 semester, and I finished graduating from Burbank High School. Okay. So I did a year and a half of high school where I had to push all the English, the 10th, 11th, 12th grade. And then from there, I started going in the community college system, and eventually got to Cal State Northridge, and I have a degree in film directing, film production.
Oh, wow.
From there, yeah, which has nothing to do with food. Well, it sort of does, but yeah. So that's another passion of mine is film.
This film.
Yeah.
And what was your experience like in college? I have kids in college. And I always feel that, school wasn't for me, and school's not for everybody to be to where you need to go. But for some, it's beneficial not only because of the knowledge that you get, but the relationships that you're able to form, because usually in college, people are coming from all different places and walks of life, and they meet at these universities, and there's these amazing opportunities for relationships. So can you talk about that experience of going to school in Northridge and any relationships that were built?
Yeah. So film school is a little different. It's more hands-on, and I at first I was sort of doing it because my parents. I kept hearing my mom and my dad in my brain saying, you're supposed to go to school, and there I am lining up paying for my tuition out of my pocket. And at some point, like in my junior year, I realized, well, if I'm going to do this, I might as well be trying to be as good as possible. So I moved my lazy behind from the back seat of the class to the front of the class, because in the back you can sleep. It's a lot of movies, and so you can just put your backpack there and just lay down.
Yeah.
And I bartended a lot back then. So I moved to the front. I started paying attention, and I started doing really well. And I got a couple of my films got picked to get produced, and we shot them at school. So it was good. And then the connections, film school again is something that back in those years, it was not that it isn't cool to do now, but a lot of kids just wanted. This is like. It was a cool career path for a lot of kids that were not really necessarily thinking of how hard it is to make it. So I don't think many of the people I graduated from, except for maybe a handful, are actually in the industry still. But yeah, definitely I keep in touch with a few of them, but not as many as I would have liked to. Yeah.
And out of school, once you graduated or finished school, did you pursue a career in film?
Yeah, always with the background in the restaurant business. So I worked at many bars and clubs in LA, and at the same time, after graduation, I got an internship at Lionsgate with the hopes to be in the production side. But unfortunately, that's a dream that only a few people get to accomplish. So they placed me in a sort of a position where I would cold call people to see if we can advertise their firm in somewhere in a film.
Yeah.
And then I did a bunch of photocopying, so I'm a master. If you ever need somebody to make copies around here, you let me know.
That's good to know.
And I don't even think people make copies, but we used to build these binders, and it was a table bigger than this with 14 seats, and every Friday, everyone sat down with this binder that had like 500 pages. And every single mention in every magazine back in those days, like Variety, and that mentioned any film that had to do with Lionsgate had to be highlighted. Mm-hmm. So my job was to put those binders together, and I would put them on this table on Friday, and then on Wednesday I would come back so it was Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And Wednesday I would start the process again, and I would go in there and I would pick up these binders that nobody ever opened. I'm like, what am I doing here? So then I kept pushing for the production side, and that opportunity never opened. So I started a small production company with a friend of mine.
Okay.
And we did, this is 2009. The economy wasn't the best. And we did a few weddings, a few low-budget music videos, and some commercials that went straight into like cable. So wasn't very artistic or creative. It was, after you finish film school and a couple of your films got made, to shoot somebody's wedding is not really a step up.
Yeah.
And then you have the bride going, oh no, you need to cut to here. It's like, oh my God. So I did it. I did the jobs that we got hired for, but it wasn't something I wanted to do. So I just kept at the restaurant business, and eventually went to Le Cordon Bleu for chef school.
Yeah, I was going to ask you. You sound like you worked at, you said, a lot of clubs and bars and restaurants in the LA area. Mm-hmm. Where did the decision, and then you said you've always had that passion for food, through your mom and cooking with her. When did that start? And, at what point did you, say, I'm going to get into this culinary arts? Because I look at chef, that's a form of art.
Right.
It's not just, hey, this is food. Like, there's an artistic culture behind that, So where did that passion come from?
It's for me, the actual passion comes from mom, but the career move was at a point. I worked at a place in Agoura Hills called Blue. It was like a college bar, a lot of Pepperdine kids and Cal Lutheran kids, and we, it was a happening place for a couple of years. There's hardly any loyalty in clubs, so whatever. I mean, you guys probably know. Like you move to the newest club is always the one that's going to have the people. So I worked there. We had a bunch of fights, and I wasn't afraid of getting in there and separating people and stuff. And this one time there was no bouncers around, so I jumped in, separated a couple of people, and I got a big glass cracked in my head. And that was already the second time. So I have 11 stitches and a few staples in my head. And at that point, by then, I was already making employee meals for the whole staff in the kitchen, because we had a kitchen, but nobody ever ate.
Yeah, it was a more like bar food.
Oh,
right?
yes, yeah. So I elevated that, and we were selling some of my specials. And then here I am with stitches in my head, and I had some money saved up, and I said, I love cooking too, so let's go. And Le Cordon Bleu had opened in Hollywood.
Okay.
And they had an accelerator program it was a 10-month program, 5 days a week, 6 hours a day, and then you'll come out with your diploma. So I took a risk and I did it, and then that's when I made that switch.
That's a big time commitment. 5 days a week, 6 hours a day, especially in your adult life, right?
Yes, yes.
It's hard to be able to commit that kind of.
Yeah, and I had already done film school. It wasn't like I wasn't 18 anymore. I was already 30. But it was cool. It was good.
And after your culinary school, did you have other endeavors and work at other restaurants as head chefs and gain experience before starting Mouthful?
Yeah, that was the goal. That was my idea. Was always with as far as paycheck, I would always try to keep a night or two, because back in those days you can work 2 nights at some club and pay your rent. So. And then in the other days, go on stage and work for other people. But I went on an interview at a place called Nick's in Beverly Hills. It was there for 20 years. And something about it, I hit it off with the owner. And so he brought me in as an extern for free. And I started working there, feeling like I'll be there for 3 months or so. And my job, I remember, was they gave me a bunch of whole black pepper that you had to put in the oven the night before at 200 degrees. And then the next morning, you get a rolling pin, and you had to roll the pepper. So it cannot be. I love the guy. I was with him, the owner. I was with him last Sunday. But the black pepper could not be exactly the same as, because I'm like, why don't you just throw it all in the grinder? No. There's textures, and there's this, and there's that. So I did black pepper for a couple of weeks, and then I moved up to peeling potatoes. But I did it with a smile. It was cool. Yeah.
Started on the ground floor.
Because what you do, and this is advice for people out there, you're doing black pepper and you know how to do it, but you're also watching other stations and you're learning and you're picking up, and it's just
you're
like
absorbing, being
chef
a sponge,
school for free, or you're getting a meal, you're getting a little money, and then as it happens, somebody didn't show up to work. And they needed to make this roasted tomato aioli for this French fries, and nobody knew how to do it. But I saw him, so I'm like, I'll make it. And the other guy goes, well, sure, I don't know how to make it. So I made it. The owner came, tasted it, and he goes, all right, you're moving up to the line. And then we started our move up.
Oh, wow, that's an interesting story. I have similar story. When I started my career in construction, I had to start out as like the warehouse manager and loading the trucks and loading that. But I feel like it plays into when you become an owner, you've played every role, so you know what to expect. You know how to manage those people, and we'll talk about managing people in a second. But it just gives you that experience, and then it gives you that sense of like humbleness, because I had to work. I didn't get just put at the top. I had to actually start rolling the pepper and pulling the potatoes. And it plays into your journey. Everyone's decision to start their own business is different. But there's always that decision that you have to make. Like you said, I don't know if at this point you had a family or not, but you had to leave your safety net, right?
Yeah.
And make that decision to start your own brick and mortar, or however you started. Tell me about that decision, and I call it, taking that risk, jumping in the water and seeing if you can swim.
Right. So for me, it was in Beverly Hills, I ended up working there at Nick's for almost 9 years. So that job that was supposed to be 3 months old, or last 3 months, ended up lasting 8 years. And I became the food and beverage director of the place shortly after I started. So I had a cool gig. Money was good, benefits and everything else. But in the back of my mind, I always wanted to do what other people do as owners, because I just had that. I had that fire. I would literally tell myself, before I die, I don't care when, I'm going to open something. Whether it fails or it doesn't, but I don't want to go to the next life thinking I never gave it a shot. So that kept me going. And then I started, I'm a very visual person, so I started this concept of a sandwich shop, because that's also sort of what my budget would allow. So I started this idea of a sandwich shop like I remember them in Peru, which is the idea of a turkey sandwich, and you go to a shop and you get a turkey sandwich, you actually see an actual turkey that's been roasted. None of these logged meats that are shaped to match the size of the bread. I'm like, so there's got to be a chicken somewhere and a leg of pork somewhere, and then real tomatoes or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's what it started, and it started with me just drawing them out, and luckily we were right there next to Rodeo Drive, so we had a bunch of like celebrity chefs that would come in, and I would bartend too. So I would show them my ideas. I'm like, they would make adjustments for me. It was cool. So then at some point there, I just said, I'm going to take a leap, talk to the owner. I said, okay, it's time for me to move on. He couldn't believe it, but I had the money. I had a little business plan, and then we opened Mouthful.
And you're located in the Conejo Valley?
Yeah, we're in Thousand Oaks.
What brought you to open Mouthful in that area?
My then girlfriend, then fiance, and eventually wife, now ex-wife, but we love each other. Mm-hmm. We're cool, Brianna. She is from Thousand Oaks.
Okay.
And her parents were retiring in Lake Tahoe. I was living in the valley in West Hills. And they put up their house for sale. So as an engaged couple, we moved into the house and took it over. So we made a home in Thousand Oaks. We weren't married yet, but I'm a big fan of, without knowing it, but there's a chef, a restaurateur, Danny Meyer, and he talks about the sense of community and being a part of a community in whatever you do. And before we recorded, we were talking about that, and it's something about that. It's like, my concept wasn't Thousand Oaks already, because I'm not making, this is 10 years ago, we're not making burgers or hot dogs, we're making kind of cool Latin different food. So it would have been an easier adjustment to open like in Silver Lake or Venice or Santa Monica, but I wanted to do it here, and I knew it was going to take time. And I just like I thought people would come in and go, no cheeseburgers, no hot dogs. I go, no, we're making these things on ciabatta bread with roasted meats, with pickled radishes, and they're like, yeah. And it was dead at first, but I still wanted to do it at home. This is home.
Okay. Your menu has like you said, a Peruvian,
mm-hmm.
but has a Latin, and that comes obviously from your heritage. What goes into, developing a menu and also thinking about your demographic, or do
mm-hmm.
you think about, your demographic, or were you just passionate about your menu?
Yeah, I think if you get caught up worrying too much about, well, I live here and I'm going to try to, there's this type of people that are around my business. It's at the end, if you make good food from a good place in your heart, they will come, Mm-hmm. But going back to the conceptualizing a menu, for me, it's the idea of having a bite in your mouth that reflects, a little bit of salty, a little bit of sweet, a little bit of umami, all in one bite. So that's the idea behind what I do now in food is, you want to experience as many things in your mouth as you can. That's also part of the name. Mm-hmm. And we started with this really, and we've stuck with it, even though labor costs are so high, but we do just about everything in-house. So French fries are cut from potatoes, and every sauce starts with eggs, garlic, oil in a blender. So we're not buying sauces that are packaged up.
Wow.
And then the idea of using things for multiple things. So we have our, Peruvian #1 dish is a lomo saltado, which is like a Asian-style stir-fried skirt steak with tomatoes and onions, and we use this Roma tomato. So, but in the recipe, it's the outer part of the Roma, so you have this heart with the seeds, but we save all those and we make barbecue sauce from there or marinara sauce from there. So we always find different angles to use everything. First because of budget, but then because why would you throw something away? So we take pride on that, and the food is a little bit different, but definitely tasty.
Wow. You're celebrating 10 years this year. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
And both of our industries, restaurant, construction, mm-hmm. those are the highest two business failures,
yes.
right? Those
yes.
two industries. And I always say it's not easy to start a business. It's hard to build and sustain success.
Yeah.
How have you been able to sustain success for 10 years, and then if you can, talk about what you had to do to survive COVID.
Yeah. So the restaurant business, and this is something people come to me and say, oh, I want to open a restaurant. So before I even answer the question, if you have any, hope or dream of owning a restaurant, please get a job at a restaurant for a week, for a month, for a couple of days, something, because there's people that open restaurants and they've never, step in a kitchen or anything like that. So definitely do that. But when it comes to, 10 years, it's now no longer about Luis the chef, it's about the team. And I learned that, I want to say kind of maybe the hard way, because at the beginning, and I don't know if you're the same way, but I'm such a control freak, or I was, that every single item that passed the line had to be physically touched by me. Like I would make a little adjustment or flip the plate. And then I realized I was, I worked 11, 12 hours just doing this.
Burned out.
Yes, and I wasn't able to see it. So I opened a restaurant and I basically got myself a job. Instead of being a business owner, I was an employee. Yeah. And there's a difference. And in trust too, because if your team doesn't feel like you are entrusting them with your baby and they feel like they're the parents of your baby, then it's not going to work.
Yeah, no, I too struggle with delegation, right? Because when we start something, like you said, it's our baby, and we usually start out shorthanded, and we have to play every role, right? And once you start to build a team, you want things done the way that you know.
Right.
And then I had to get to a point where I became result-based, right? I got a great team too. And it was like everyone doesn't take the same path to get to the result. And I got to sit back and get a little bit more hands-off and trust my team. And if it doesn't come out exactly, then I can correct and teach, and that's where we grow. So I definitely can relate to that, because I too needed to prove everything. I needed to see everything. I needed to be everywhere. And that's okay. But again, we have in the process of growing, we learn how to delegate once we get the right people around us. Yeah. And that and my sustained success too is also goes to my team, especially, for what we do is very could be very complex at times, and you can't do anything by yourself. So in 2020, after you've already been in business for 6 or 7 years, COVID hits, and these regulations hit your business, but you're not deemed essential, but you can serve food. You can do it at certain capacities. Your industry was severely affected. So what things that you do, how did it affect you, and what things that you do to keep your business going? Yeah. So it's it was extremely tough. And for me, especially going back to June 2019, I started Mouthful with a business partner. We were 50-50, and he took care of the back-end office stuff. So throughout the years, pre-COVID, I had always in my mind, the idea of, while I was still married, of buying him out. And that offer was made at the beginning, at the late 2018. We worked out details, negotiated. 2019 July comes, still married, so we made a family decision of buying my partner out. So we met him where he wanted to be financially, took a loan, he's out, I'm in. 3 months later, I'm separated, moved out of the house, and this is now December of 2019, and then March 2020, COVID. So now I was scared. I really, we had 18 employees. Wow. We were doing well. Even in those 4 months that I was solo, we were climbing up in the numbers. And then, all these other things start happening. And we sat there with 5 employees on maybe day 7 of COVID, where just takeout, or I don't even think anybody knew what to make of this. I know it was, especially in the restaurant industry. Like it was up and it was down. It was you can serve 6 people, but not. Not indoors, outdoors, and then the customers themselves were weirded out. So we went down to one day we did $41 in sales. Wow! And we're sitting there with the 4 people that were working. And it's 5 p.m. and I said, what, as much as I don't want to do this, we're losing money every day, so perhaps we should take a little break. So I sent everyone home. We closed early that day.
and I went home, and this is the pivotal story for where I am right now. But we went home. I had my kids already separated, and my son was 5, and I figured I'm going to have some days off. I'm going to teach my kid how to ride a bike. I don't have money to buy a bike, so I went on Nextdoor, and I started looking for bikes. And as I'm looking for bikes, I see this person saying, I am so mad that I missed this essential packages from Lazy Dog. And it kind of come in. It's like, for $40, you're getting, chicken, potatoes, rice, bread, butter, and a dozen eggs in a bag. And I'm going, I got all those things at the restaurant. So I never posted on Nextdoor. I just said, hey, this is Luis Sanchez, owner of Mouthful Eatery. I got all those things. Message me, and I will meet you there tomorrow. So we had 52 people message me. So I went early in the morning, made my little packages of everything I had, and I became a grocery store for a while. So people would come in and they would order. And then I got carrots for people with horses, and then everyone's making bread. So somehow I found yeast, so people were paying premium for that. And then, so that sustained it. I started making things like lasagna. I've never made lasagna at Mouthful, but I say, hey, I'm going to have lasagna tomorrow. So just put it in your oven. Chicken enchiladas, whatever. I got creative.
You had to pivot.
Yeah. And then what the big thing was when the governor announced that there was going to be a program teaming up restaurants and the counties to feed the elderly. Because here we are telling the elderly not to leave their homes. And surprisingly, a lot of people that are in that age group and with health conditions do not have any family support. So they cannot they cannot go to the doctor, they cannot go get food. So I applied for this thing first through the state and then through the county, and I got approved shortly after that, and started with 13 clients where we dropped off breakfast, lunch, and dinner to their home.
Wow.
And that grew up from 13, we went up to 98 clients, and it paid well by the county. So we were running a restaurant from 2 a.m. to 8 a.m., and then doing our pickups from regular Mouthful, where people couldn't even come into the patio. At first, we couldn't even see people in the patio.
Yeah.
Eventually, patios open and down the line inside. But so it's that combination of everything we tried that kept us afloat.
Do you feel that, going through that, because I have a similar situation with, with the same kind of life change, going through a divorce, through COVID, at a challenging time in business, right? I mean, so I can relate to you in that. But was there ever that moment where you felt, like you said, like, I don't know if I'm going to make it out of this,
Yeah.
But like you said, did going through COVID actually feel like make you stronger as an entrepreneur? Because you went from, hey, I'm running this business. I just bought my partner out, which was always a goal of yours. You had a great restaurant, great vibe, and overnight it changed for you.
Yeah.
And you had to pivot to, what it sounded like, to almost like a catering service, right?
Yeah.
And that was never in your business plan.
No,
I'm sure.
never. And nobody's, yeah.
So do you feel that it made you and probably your team stronger?
Yeah. A few things happened there. Personally, I went back to the kid that washed cars and that had to make those $25. I needed. I had no out. Plus I have 2 little ones that I got to be financially responsible for them.
Absolutely.
So I went back to that, and whatever it takes to be able to feed them and pay the rent, I will do. So there was nothing beneath me, and not that it ever was, but I never felt it as strongly at that point. And I could only compare it to when I moved here and I had the drive of just making it happen. And when it comes to the team, an interesting thing happened because we went from 18 to 3 or 4 employees. So we were, and at that point, if you remember, people were sitting home getting paychecks. And so I would call people to come back as we started picking up, and they're like, why? I'm getting a paycheck. So then I met with, we sat down on a table like this and with a team of 5, including myself, and they brought something up. They said, why don't we make sure that whoever we bring in, it's somebody that was a good one? And I'm like, well, really? Because weren't they all good ones? No. So then we started building, it was like an all-star basketball team, like, no. And plus, I would call them and they didn't want it. They were like, oh, okay, I'm going to get a year's worth of money sitting at home. So we brought back the good ones. And we went back through job descriptions and everything else, and we push. I feel like my employees are happy working with us, but at the same time, we push. We are always doing something, and that's. But if everyone's always doing something, it doesn't feel like you're taking advantage of anybody, because we're not. I mean, it's a job. We get paid. My team gets paid by the hour and salary, but we all work and we all try to have a good time while we do it. But it's constant work.
Yeah. Me and my fiance are foodies, but we're also we also love to have a good time, right? When a customer walks into Mouthful, not only are they getting good food, but what's the environment like? What kind of environment have you created?
Oh, yeah. It's happy. You walk in there, and without saying it's a party, it's definitely a happy vibe. So it's bright colors. It's a cool Latin music that makes you, and sometimes you catch people dancing.
Wow.
And that's something that I wanted to create. I mean, I worked at TGI Fridays, and the gentleman that was the manager would say, the restaurant across the street also sells Bud Light and draft, but it's our environment that makes it. So it's kind of like that. So we wanted to create something that was genuine to us as a concept, but also special and different. And I think just as important as food is customer service, because that's what makes you go back. Great food, but if you're treated in a respectful, friendly manner, even though it's fast casual. So we do certain things like, we order at a counter, you sit down with a number, we bring you your food, but that person will come to you at some point in your meal and hey, how's everything tasting? If your cup of water, which is free, is half, we'll grab it and we'll refill it for you. So even though it's fast casual, I wanted to go the extra mile and make it a little more elevated. Yeah. So definitely happy. We also have live music on Thursdays. We have trivia nights on Wednesdays. Wow. So we do different things throughout the evenings. Yeah.
Just to keep it. So it sounds like you've built something where not only is family and fun friendly, but it's a community, and you probably have a lot of regulars that have grown with your business. With us.
Yeah. No, I have couples that were dating now bringing their second child in, and that's awesome. That's awesome. That's rewarding and great. And one of the things, too, from the food part of it is when you notice that your regulars, this happens a lot, is they go pick up somebody from the airport, and Mouthful is their first stop because they can't wait to show their family from Seattle or somewhere else the restaurant that they like going to. So that's the best.
That's amazing to become a destination spot, right? I could hear the passion in what you do in your business, and I'm very similar. I'm very passionate. I love what I do, so it doesn't feel like work. But time management, and you talk about having two children. How do you manage your time? How do you turn it off, or what things do you do to just to have some peace of mind? And there's these ebbs and flows of business, right? When we first start, like we're everything and we're working 25/8, and then you realize, wait a second, I got a team, I don't have to work so much. Like my quality of life matters. What does Chef Sanchez do to help balance his life and then his business?
Yeah, I think you brought up a great point. It's the team, and the team starts with being able to trust and to let go a little bit. So once I was able to do that and brought in key players that fill in those positions, then I was able to do more stuff with the kids. And I think it's as much as I love my business and it is my baby, my children are number one.
Of course.
So then that's where if I'm not at the restaurant, then my children have all my attention. And when it comes to me time, believe it or not, I still sit back and YouTube is a great source for anybody that wants to cook, because you can just type in anything and you will learn how to make just about anything. And it's and I me in the restaurant business now for almost 35 years, I still lean on that because I still have a big collection of books, but sometimes you're on the road and just on your phone.
Yeah.
And I can watch a version of what I want to make, and I watch 5 people make it differently, and in my head I'm like, all right, I'm going to work with this, work with that. So that is what I try to do on my downtime. So it's always related to food
Yeah.
or something creative. I don't feel the need to really step away from that.
Yeah, that's amazing. We talked about before your community efforts, right? And you like to be involved in the community, and it sounds like the community is also a part of your business. What do you like to do as far as your community efforts, and how impactful has your business been and allowed you to be in position to be a positive impact in your community?
Definitely my involvement with local schools. So we do a good amount of fundraising events at the restaurant for, whether it's a team or something, but for the most part, we try to focus on schools and giving back. Maybe it's my, the fact that my kids are in elementary school and it's just something close to my heart. And then another way that we give back is by we do cooking classes.
Oh, wow.
There's a school in Agoura Hills that's full immersion in Spanish. And now this year was like maybe the 5th year that we've done it, where we are their field trip. So they come in and it's 7th grade kids, and then we create stations and we cook. But the cool thing is that everything is done in Spanish for these kids. And these kids are amazing, and they're not Latin like I am, and they're like in Spanish. I was like, I wish my kid could do that, And it's just such a, it's fulfilling. It's you're giving back, but you're also taking, because it's kind of weird, but that energy just feeds you for a while, and then we try to do it again. But yeah, so our involvement with schools, and obviously the meals that we did for the elderly were a big thing, and then we do. Any sort of event, there's something that happens in September where we come up with a dish, and other restaurants do, and 805 Magazine is behind it, and then you donate a portion of the sales of that to an organization of your choice. So we try to get involved in different angles.
Oh, wow. Well, that's amazing, as well as just, your community efforts. And, when you talked about, helping the elderly, it didn't even broach my mind that, the elderly were struggling just to get food and probably didn't understand the technology to DoorDash and that kind of thing, So that's amazing. I definitely commend that out, being a community warrior. You started a YouTube channel, Seat at My Table. Was the goal of that to, let people, brand yourself, to let people know who Chef Luis is, and then, teach people how to, make some of your favorite dishes? Yeah,
for sure. I mean, there's definitely a cross-promotion that goes on with a Seat at My Table on YouTube and Mouthful Eatery. But I'm a big fan of cooking shows, and I, as much as I am now starting to enjoy, TikTok-style videos because of my kids, I still have this nostalgic connection with an actual cooking show where you see the process,
Yeah.
That's something that's going to last more than 15 seconds. And that's kind of what I wanted to bring back. So if we start with the chicken, there's a chicken there, and we cut the chicken. It's not like just fast shots from... Yeah. So we're back to, a little commentary. And, I'm a big fan of, like, Emerald when he started. And there was that energy that I loved. And I remember the first round of episodes we shot at a studio in L.A., and now we shoot at my kitchen at the house, so it's even more personal. But it's just basically home-style food. And some of the dishes come from Mouthful, but a lot of them do not. And it's just, I would like for people to after they watch, to feel not intimidated by the process of cooking. Baking is a little bit different because that's more of a formula. So you can't really mess around with like, a little more of this or a little less of that. Mm-hmm. So with cooking, it's just layers. And that's something that Emerald used to say, layers of flavor. So you just throw things in there, and it's never going to be, at home, it's always going to be a little tiny different, but that's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
But don't get intimidated by the process. And the chef school learning part that I took from that is, before you start anything, a recipe, before you start the process of making something, you need to have everything out on the counter. Because that's what people go, how come it's not working? I go, because you're trying to cut the carrots while your onions are burning. You gotta have the carrots have to be cut. So you have everything ready. So then it's enjoyable. It's not a race of like, oh my God, I'm burning something. You're burning something because you're not prepared. So that's something that that will make you a better cook at home. But yeah, definitely an approachable YouTube cooking show. It's what we are.
And do you or have you always enjoyed being in front of the camera and being outgoing? Because before I started doing this podcast, like, and it's still till now, I don't like to be in front of the camera. I'm the person behind the scenes, and I'm just, kind of more low key. But, doing this podcast and putting it on a video has helped me, like, just get out of my comfort zone.
Right.
And grow in other areas so I can apply, like, being uncomfortable in other areas of my life. And have you always enjoyed, being in front of the camera now, creating content for your own personal page, and I see you do a lot of content for your Mouthful social pages too.
Yeah, I don't mind it. I actually enjoy part of it, and I think it's it comes from bartending. When you're starting in a bar, people, the first thing you look up, and it's sort of a stage. So without being an actor, you're sort of a performer back then and using your hands. So I related a lot to that. So I don't mind it all. But I also won't do, I just wanted to. I don't want to be a different persona on camera. So it's just me. I don't have to fake it. There's been people that go, oh, you gotta go. No, I feel comfortable with who I am, and that's what I want to stick to.
Yeah, that's amazing. So what's next? What's coming up in the future? Are there any future plans for not only yourself personally that you want to accomplish, but also with Mouthful?
Yeah, for Mouthful, we are starting an events by Chef Sanchez branch of the business where we're gonna focus on whether it's at home events or on our venue. Rehearsals, weddings, parties of 20 to 100 with a completely different menu. So we're launching that in the next months. We're doing some photo shoots in a couple of weeks at the restaurant. And then a cookbook. I actually, before coming here, I was at a coffee shop, Ragamuffin. Love that place in Newbury Park. Yeah, good people. Sean's a great guy. So that's kind of become my hub to work on the cookbook, which it's a process because I'm doing more of a journal-style cookbook where it's handwritten, and I wanted people to feel the process of it. For me, it's color pencils and markers and colorful little drawings of what it's going to look like before I even write the recipe. So I'm trying to bring that into a cookbook, and so that and also the events, and then try to enjoy life and hang with the kids and keep coaching like we talked about, and just have fun with them.
Man, that's amazing. Well, I always say the most valuable thing that we have in this world is time. I appreciate you sharing your time with me today and with our audience. Tell our audience where they can find you on social media, and you're also on YouTube as well.
Yeah, we're on Instagram and Facebook, and those are under Mouthful Eatery, and then our website is mouthfuleatery.com. We're located in the city of Thousand Oaks, 2626 East Thousand Oaks Boulevard, right across the street from 24-Hour Fitness, and our YouTube channel is called, one more time, is A Seat at My Table, and we release episodes monthly. We try to release the equivalent of one a week, and just follow us.
Well, thanks again for all our listeners out there. I will definitely be stopping by Mouthful Eatery in the near future.
That's awesome.
I got hungry just sitting here talking food with you, but thank you for sharing your story, and tune in to our YouTube page. We're on Spotify, Apple, and all the other podcast platforms.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.